Jonathan, thank you so much for being on the show. Very much appreciated. I know that we've known each other for a couple years, and you've been working on the juice, and I was at another startup beforehand when we connected. I know you know Jen Steele as well, my former colleague, and I know she's building Sound GTM now. So shout out to Jen Steele and her team. But then we met in person in Brooklyn, and that was awesome because it was like, oh, this is fucking awesome, right? It's like, you know, the connecting of the avatar online with someone in person. So that was really fun, and you're just like got a great energy, and I can see why you've been crushing it with the juice. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'll share. This is probably too much inside information, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the first time we actually met in person was in the men's restroom, which, is the start of all good male friendships. So, yeah, it's a crazy world. I know we had been, like you said, been in touch for a while. And, with COVID and event schedules and everybody remote, it's always fun to cross paths in person and see where that leads us. And here we are hitting record on a podcast.
For sure. Well, real quick, why don't we dive into, before we give folks out there, B2B tech marketers, actionable insights on how to do better at content marketing and marketing in general, can we dive in real quick into the inspiration that you had behind launching the juice?
Absolutely. So I was leading marketing and sales dev at a company called Springbuck that did healthcare analytics. And it was a really interesting business because our platform had all of this healthcare data in it. And so we were able to create really, really, I thought, fascinating content that was data driven from real healthcare data. Things like, populations at risk for diabetes based on other markers, and people at risk for stroke, and COVID came up, and we had really interesting early COVID data running through our platform. But I was frustrated because it felt like we were creating really cool data, really cool content. And then we'd put it on our blog. We'd maybe promote it through our newsletter, maybe pay to promote it in a few places. And then we were on to the next piece of content and on to the next piece of content. It felt like we were on this treadmill or hamster wheel of content creation. And what happens is you bury your own content on your own website. People aren't finding it. It's not ranking. It's not serving you any value, and it's not serving your audience any value. And we looked around, and I kind of had this aha moment of everything we do, whether it's music, movies, fashion, cars, homes, video, there's a platform that connects buyer and seller, or creator and consumer. But in B2B content, we as marketers, we're all fighting each other to drive traffic to our website. Very old fashioned. And so I said, why don't we aggregate all the B2B content in a single platform? And then the software can play matchmaker between consumer and creator, and let those two connect a little bit easier than having to go directly to somebody's website. So that was really the inspiration. We've got now 500,000 resources in our library, 80,000 users receiving content recommendations from the platform. So far, so good. Still a long way to go, but we're having a lot of fun.
And that's grown since the last time we chatted, because I know the number was a little lower. So awesome. And that was only 2 months ago, maybe something like that.
Yeah, we've over the last probably 6 to 8, 12 months, we've really found some good channels for growth for us. And so, just trying to keep that momentum going as best we can.
Awesome. Well, if you think about the types of results, you mentioned like the distribution that the juice provides folks. If you think about kind of like I don't know, maybe if the B2B marketer and their KPIs or metrics that they're thinking about, what are the types of results that they should expect to experience using something like the juice?
Content's a really interesting space because each business treats content uniquely. Some businesses view content as purely like brand building, awareness. They're looking for views and impressions. Others rely extremely heavily on content for demand generation, leads, pipeline, conversion into revenue. What we have found works best on our platform is we do what we call no-lift content distribution. We're going to automatically distribute your content for you and get it in front of a relevant audience for you. Then what we know what happens over time is if we do that consistently enough, which we do, we've got a CRM integration, and you're going to see that very naturally lead to pipeline creation and pipeline conversion. So there are 4 core success metrics that we track, which is impressions, brand views, followers, and then intent signals. Those are the 4 core success metrics. And then beneath that, we have pipeline, source pipeline and influence pipeline, source revenue and influence revenue. And that's kind of the life cycle. We say, hey, create really great content that engages the audience. And we know in enough time, about 162 days, that will lead to pipeline creation and conversion for you.
And I think it's timely given the explosion of content creation in B2B, influencers, folks who are literally building out careers creating content. So for the folks out there listening, if you fall into one of these buckets, definitely check out The Juice. But I wanted to transition into some recommendations. You've been working with thousands of marketers over the last few years and of course, deployed strategies yourself. How do you recommend marketers focus on developing that content strategy in a way that is sales enablement friendly and or buyer journey, sales process friendly, right? So in other words, it maps to those steps in the buyer journey. And I think that I shouldn't say or, because it should be and, right? Sales enablement friendly and mapping to that buyer journey. What recommendations would you give folks?
I've got a really crazy idea here. Talk to your sales team. How's that for advice? It sounds crazy, but I think there's a lot of marketing teams that they think that sales should be reacting to what marketing is creating. And I think, there has to be some give and take there. Sit down with your sales team, sit down with your prospects, listen to sales calls, sit on sales calls if they'll have you, and listen to the language that your sales team is using and that the prospect is using. We as marketers grow infatuated with trying to get the market to use our language, but I think a lot of times it needs to actually go in reverse. The other thing that we see on our platform with data is that templates perform really well. I think, especially in this age where it's never been cheaper to create text-based content or easier to create text-based content. It's becoming commoditized. You have to give away things that are really actionable and really tactical and usable by your audience. And, templates, toolkits, those are things that can't quite be replicated by AI yet. So I think that's something from a sales enablement and sales perspective that your prospects can use, and they're going to build a lot of brand affinity and maybe some interest in your company if you are helping them accomplish their job.
I keep thinking about one of my last roles where I led content, and here's how this was done, which I now want to slap myself. But in any case, just given that I've been on the sales side most of the time, right, throughout my career. But here's how it went. I sat down with a spreadsheet and I started to list out topics that I thought would either map to tofu, mofu, or bofu.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's how buyers move through. They're like, oh yeah, I'm tofu right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, this is a culture piece that maybe we could use in this, and this is a thought leadership. I had all these categories, etc. And then we started to develop the content, and then we segmented it even further by listing it as, oh, this is video, or this is text-based, or this is audio, or this is this or that, whatever, right? All these categorization or content types. But guess what? To your point, and this is so stupid of us how we did it. I can't believe that we missed this. We never talked to sales. We never looked at any analytics to see, hey, what's resonating out there? Like, one thing I think also that marketers do pretty well, generally speaking, is we'll understand perhaps like macro trends or maybe hashtags or things like that are being spoken to online, etc., so on and so forth. But from a sales enablement, and by the way, that I'm not suggesting that that's not useful, but from a sales perspective, right, or sales enablement perspective, it's not as impactful. And we wonder why sales doesn't use it. Sales is sitting there having these conversations on the front lines on a daily basis, understanding in many ways in a very qualitative way. But I know our systems have allowed us to sort of quantify these insights a lot better these days. Shout out to Gong and Chorus and everything else. But they really understand the triangulation or those intersections between these different things, the macro stuff, but then what this persona is saying, and all these different sort of nuances, right? Again, the intersection of all these things. And this is, I think, one of the things that we miss, right? And so to your point, like being able to sit down, it's so simple. And it was funny how you said it was like, it's so simple, right? But why are we missing the mark on this? Why are we just not getting there, or figuring it out, or like deprioritizing this? Is it a human problem? Like,
I could rant on this topic all day, and I think it's easy for marketers, myself included. And when I say marketers, I'm talking about myself, because that's the seat I was in. It feels good to talk about what's on the leading edge, what's innovative, what's sexy, what's the topic du jour. Generative AI, outbound is dead, whatever kind of cliche you want to talk about, and you feel really smart to other marketers around you, right? And it's like maybe you pat yourself on the back, but when your audience, I think our audience as marketers, is engaging with B2B content, they're not looking for that. They're looking to accomplish a task. They're trying to be better at their job. They have an acute pain point that they are trying to solve. They have a boss asking them a question that they don't know enough about. They're trying to do something that they've never done before, and they're looking for content to help them accomplish that thing. And so that's why I always say, like, B2B content should really be about making your audience better at the basics or what your product is trying to accomplish. And so I think that's like, we lose sight of that so often, and we see it on our platform that is the best performing content. It's templates and toolkits outperform any content format on our platform by a factor of 3. And a lot of the most popular topics are things about how to do things, which sounds like old-fashioned content advice, but I think it still rings true. And the last thing I'll rant on while we're on the topic: talk to your sales team, talk to your prospects, also talk to your customers. That's going to uncover a lot as well. And that's something I slap myself, my old self in my old role, is like not supporting our customer success team or our customers well enough as a marketer.
well, I also think that the content marketer, let's narrow down that function or that role. I don't know how many content marketers are actually speaking to customers, right, or doing that work. B, even speaking to sales, right, because they're not typically thinking about sales enablement. And I think that's a problem. I think like the maybe product marketer, generally speaking, is very close to the messaging and positioning and the sales enablement stuff and all that. So they tend to have a hall pass to kind of speak to sales and have that access. But I think that's one of the things maybe that is a problem. Like, again, when I was content and community, I like the idea of taking time out of a salesperson or sales leader's day to allow me to gather insight was frowned upon in the last role. And it was certainly like, and even if it wasn't explicitly frowned upon, right, it was sort of like, are you really gonna like take the time up? They should be calling and prospecting, doing proposal, whatever. What tips would you give leaders out there now that you're a CEO? And of course, I think you have a different perspective because you've been on that side, on the B2B marketer side, and had to do these things. So your perspective as a CEO, has it informed perhaps the way that you would give advice to marketing leaders and sales leaders about saying, hey, we need to do this. This is not a waste of time. This is not a distraction. This is going to help us longer term generate more revenue.
You mentioned the content marketer there, like, not talking to sales, not talking to customers. But I think they're not incentivized to. And I think it starts at the top and how you're incentivizing your content marketers and your marketing team, right? If your goal with content is views, impressions, et cetera, there's no reason for them to talk to prospects or customers, because they just need to get it in front of as many eyeballs. Who cares who the eyeballs belong to? They're not going to be. That's not, you just misaligned incentives. And if you can align those incentives, content's going to be in the room more often, and then they're going to create better content that helps everybody in that room more often. So I think it's a two-way street there, and I would just think really long and hard about the incentives, because I think content specifically, it's so easy to just say, oh, well, we should do content because that's what companies do and we know we need it and it's squishy and we're not sure how to measure it. I would encourage your sales and marketing teams to sit down and say, what is the goal of content at this business? Is it brand and culture and views and impressions and awareness, or is it we need to drive business from this? And I think too often, again, it's not well defined, or it tries to be everything to everybody, and that doesn't set the content marketer up for success.
I feel like we can speak to this for hours and hours, and still we got to do a better job of it, I think. Absolutely. Across our practice. Quick question. What would you say the modern B2B marketer looks like right now in 2024 and beyond, just given AI, given the consolidation of a lot of practices, given the fact that we have to do more with less staff, less resources these days, but are still moving the needle, I think, as a space through innovation?
Yeah, fast learner, I would say. Technology is evolving so fast, they have to adapt to new technology regularly. And no college class, no lesson is going to train you for technology of tomorrow. So I think you have to be a fast learner. You have to be excited to experiment and test those new technologies, test new channels, test new tactics. And you can't be afraid of failure along with that. Like, not everything's going to work. And I think that's just part of being a marketer is testing inherently is going to bring some failures along the way. And now I've said 3 or 4 things, but the last thing I'll say is I do think maybe it goes without saying on some of that, but the ability to actually measure what's working and what's not working. There is, I think, to do really good marketing, there is a small component of just data analysis and number crunching that will set you apart from a lot of marketers who get into marketing from brand and creative side. I think having some of that data and analytics side, whether that's through tools that make that easier for you, or you doing your own kind of Excel spreadsheeting or pivot table jockeying, I do think that's a way to stand out in today's market.
One last question here. What's one marketing tip that you would recommend that a B2B tech company should really double down on in 2024?
My perspective is going to be biased by what we do in the content space. So both mine sort of apply to content. I've maybe referenced both of them a little bit, but maybe the overarching umbrella for both of them is give away what you know. It's really easy to replicate generic blog posts, generic thought leadership even. But what we've seen work, and we've got data to prove it, is the templates and toolkits. Give away what works for your business, and that's going to broaden your network. And then also give your proprietary data, I think kind of falls under that give away what you know, right? I think really good content right now, proprietary data can't be replicated by AI, at least not yet. And I think the brands, you mentioned one of them earlier, Gong, Chorus, Intercom, a lot of those businesses that have grown through content, it's because they are giving away value through their proprietary data set. It's a playbook we're trying to follow at the Juice. It's something I did at Springbuck where we had healthcare analytics data. And I just think that's such a powerful asset right now, especially in this market where very generic content is easier than ever to produce.
Awesome. By the way, I love the sign back there, Believe.
You like that?
I love it. I've been seeing it in the background there and love it. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan, for being on the show. If folks wanted to, first of all, learn more about the Juice and moreover, connect with you, maybe learn from you, follow your content, perhaps get in contact with you for tips and tricks and anything else that may be of value, what are the best URLs or channels to reach you?
Our platform is free for professionals to sign up for, build a profile, and start receiving content recommendations from that'll help you grow your career and grow your business. You can set up a profile at app.thejuicehq.com. Again, it's free for you to join there. And then if you want to connect with me, reach out on LinkedIn, Jonathan Gandolf there. Love connecting, love posting semi-lukewarm hot takes, and love engaging there. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and would love to talk.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful, wonderful day, Jonathan.
Thank you. You too.